This week on Hot Tip Tuesday, we're going wire crazy. Let's go. Hello everyone and welcome to another Hot Tip Tuesday. I'm Jim McIntosh. This week we're going to talk about wire. Now, you experienced people, don't think that this isn't for you, because we're not only going to talk about wire basics, but we're going to talk about the best way to choose the right wire for the right project. And there's a lot of you that are using maybe the wrong wire for some of your work, and you're making it so much harder. So I'm going to give you a few tips as to how you can choose the best wire for your work to make your life not only easier, but to make beautiful work. Okay? So let's talk about wire shape, we'll talk about wire temper, and we'll talk about wire type. So first, let's talk about wire type. There are a lot of different types of wire out there. There's sterling silver, there is argentium silver, there's silver filled, there's copper, and it comes in raw copper and antiqued copper. There's gold filled. There's even craft wire that comes in purples and pinks and reds. There's all different kinds of wire. So how do you know which one's the best one for the project that you're working on? This is what I like to do, okay? This is not what everybody likes to do, but this is how I do it. I match up the wire with the stone. I kind of like thinking about wearing the right shoes with whatever you're wearing. You kind of choose the right shoes, don't you? Well, the same is true with wire. You want to use wire that is going to make the stone look a lot better. So what would be good is to take the stone and put wire over it. Just hold a couple of strands of that wire on the stone and imagine how that stone or how that project is going to look once you're all finished. That's the easiest way to kind of determine that. Now, personally, I use a lot of silver because I like silver, but I also am drawn to stones that look better in silver, like stones like Larimar. I love Larimar. I think it's a great stone, and I use silver on it all the time, as well as other things like labradorite and some other stones that I feel look really good in silver. But there are a lot of you out there that are getting darker colored stones, greens, browns, reds. Those look better in maybe copper or gold or even brass. So you see how choosing the right wire can really enhance the look of the stone. So just a few tips on picking wire. Let's now talk about wire temper. Okay, here we go. Now let's talk about wire temper. Now, when I say temper, I'm not talking about how mad you get when the project isn't working out, the wire isn't moving the way you want, and you're yelling and screaming and you're pulling your hair out and throwing tools around your studio. We're not talking about that kind of wire temper. The type of wire temper we're talking about is how the metal moves, how malleable it is, how flexible the wire is. Now, the two most common types of wire that wire artists use in their work is half hard and dead soft. Many of you are using half hard wire. Why? Because that's what you were taught to use. And you learned from somebody who was taught to use half hard wire, who was taught by somebody to use half hard wire, and was taught by somebody who, and you get the point, right? This has been around for many years. Why? Because half hard wire was the only thing available. Now, they didn't make dead soft wire when this became popularized back in the 60s and the 70s. Today we have dead soft wire. What's the difference? Half hard wire is very stiff, very difficult to work with. When you bend it into a shape, it's going to stay in that shape. It's not going to move. And that's why a lot of people still use it today, is because it will retain its shape. The problem with dead soft wire is that when you do bend it, if you're shaping it around a stone, for instance, a frame around a stone, it has a tendency to shape, and then because it's hard, it will spring back a little bit. So sometimes you got to work a little bit extra with half-hard wire to get the shape that you want, exactly the way that you want it. Another problem that comes with half-hard wire is it's difficult on your fingertips. So if you're new at using wire in your work and your fingertips don't have the calluses built up on it like many of us have on our fingertips, this can really cause some problems for your fingertips when you're trying to smooth the wire, bending the wire, doing all of the very intricate things with the wire. Dead soft wire will really wear your fingertips out. Dead soft wire is also very unforgiving. I said that once you bend it into a shape, it stays that shape. That can be good, but it can also be bad. If you bend the wire and you realize you bent it in the wrong place, it's difficult to take that bend out without there being a ripple in the wire. Dead soft wire, on the other hand, is quite different. Dead soft wire is a lot easier to move and shape and form. And it doesn't really have the springy effect that half-hard wire does. It's also easier on your fingertips. When you move the wire between your fingertips, when you bend it with your fingertips, it's a lot easier to move, and it's a lot easier on the fingertips, so you don't wear yourself out so quickly. And I always recommend dead soft to new wire artists. So if you're new, explore using dead soft wire in your work. But dead soft wire also is very forgiving. If you bend the wire and you realize that that's not what you wanted, you can unbend it. You can do just a little bit of work, maybe with some flat tip wire, or flat tip pliers rather, and take all of the shape out of it, and you won't even be able to tell that there was any bend there. So that's temper on wire. Now let's talk about the shape of the wire. Okay, let's do it. When it comes to wire wrapping, wire comes in a couple of different shapes. There's round, square, and half round wire. Half round wire we generally reserve for wrapping a wire bundle together. It has a flat side, it has a domed side. So that's really the easiest part of the whole thing, is choosing that to do all of your wraps with makes the job a whole lot easier. But when it comes to your frame wires, the wires that make up the border around your stone, a lot of you are using round wire, and you're getting frustrated and angry because the wire is just so movable. It moves all over the place. Let's go over to the bench, and I want to show you a couple of things that I want you to think about when it comes to choosing whether you're going to use round or square wire. Okay, so let's go take a look at it right now. As I mentioned, there's a couple of different types of wire. Now, this is a cross section of 4 round wires that we would put into a bundle. Now, I want you to notice the contact in between each one of these. There's not a whole lot of contact here. In fact, the contact points in between each one of these will move as the wire moves. So if you're putting a wrap wire around all 4 of these, the wire is going to have a tendency to pull in to a bunch, kind of like gathering an armful of sticks out in the woods or out in your yard. You put them together, they have a natural tendency to come together with one another. That's what's happening here. Now, if you're doing wire weaving, see, you want this curve because you're going to want to be able to get in between each one of these. So it all depends on what you're doing. So wire weaving, I would recommend using round wire, but doing a border wrap where you're wrapping all 4 of those wires together, I would definitely go with a different wire. And let me show you what I mean. I'll show you another graphic. Here is a cross section of 4 square wires. Now notice the contact points in between each one. They contact one another all the way across each one. So when you wrap these together, their tendency would be to pull in also, but more often they're going to push in against one another. So there's more room on these, or there's more contact area between the wires that are even. So wrapping square wire and then shaping this as a bundle around a stone is far more easier. And think about this as like bricks in a wall, or think about these as blocks. Remember playing blocks with blocks as a kid? You'd build one on top of the other. Well, the contact that they had between each other would give strength to whatever wall or tower or whatever you were making with those blocks. It would give you that stability. And that's what's happening here with this square wire. It's getting more and more stability because of the shape and the contact in between each of the wires. Okay, so for a border wrap, I would definitely go with square wire as opposed to round wire. Okay, does everybody understand that? I hope you do. So that gives you just a little idea as to how and why the wire interacts with one another. So it makes it easier then to choose what type of wire to use. As I said, I like to use square wire for my framing wires because I do a border wrap. So I wrap all of the bundle together as one. I'm not doing wire weaving. If I was doing that, I would go with round wire because it would make it much easier to do it that way. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what type of work you're doing. What is your goal in mind? What's going to work best around the stone that you're wrapping? And take into consideration how those are going to lay flat. And also remember that don't wrap your bundles together with square wire. Why? Because it gets a little wonky. Wrapping with square wire, wrapping the whole bundle together, you kind of have a tendency as you wrap and you pull the wrap wire around, square wire will have a tendency to roll just slightly. So now you're wrapping on edge. And many people learned this way, and many people are accustomed to it. But when you're wrapping, my suggestion is wrap your bundles together with half round wire. Unless, of course, you're making a weaved piece, and then, of course, you're going to wrap with round wire. Okay? So let's finish up. Well, hopefully that made some sense to you. Hopefully it gives you a little more insight as to what type of wire to choose. You always want to make sure that you're looking for wire that's going to fit the piece you're doing best, because you want your project to turn out to be the best thing you've ever made. Each piece should get better and better and better. So hopefully this gives you some insight as to what and how to choose your wire. So thanks for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, please give me a like. Hit the thumbs up down below. Be sure also, if you haven't already, subscribe. We put these videos out every week. We give you a new hot tip each Tuesday. And so please make sure that you hit subscribe, hit the bell also so that you get those alerts as to when the new stuff is coming out. And also I want you to be sure that you follow me over on Instagram. You can see it's just up above you where you can visit me at. Visit our website. There's a lot of links down in the description for this video, so check those out as well. I've given you some various places that you can go to really get some more information on wire wrapping. Okay? So I appreciate you stopping by. Until next week, I want you to remember, practice, practice, practice.